Before you tell me live action anime is terrible and I'm completely wrong, take a look at these graphs. The red lines represent Google searches for Marvel from 2004 to 2020, and the blue lines anime in China, India, and the United States, which make up 3 of the 4 largest contributors to the international box office, with the 4th being, yes, Japan. Now I don't know if you've noticed, but over the past several years, the little indie filmmakers known as Disney have been doubling down on kowtowing to foreign audiences, and I think they're just getting started. I'm not sure if the huge spike that we've seen this year can be entirely attributed to the Demon Slayer movie or the Olympics, or if the lockdowns have just made everyone realize that staying home alone watching anime is clearly the best way to spend your life, but whatever the cause, anime's popularity is exploding. And depending on your view of gatekeeping, that's either a good thing or a really bad thing. But regardless of your feelings, society is becoming more and more global each day, so the mainstreamification of anime is all but inevitable. So what does this all have to do with Marvel? Never before in the film industry has there been a fad with as much popularity and staying power as superhero films. But with the MCU's big finale Endgame, I think we're reaching the end of the game for this genre. And it may not happen that quickly, but eventually people will grow tired of the constant sequels and reboots, and the pendulum will swing back around the other way as people clamor for original content. And you know where there's a virtually infinite supply of original content? Anime. Much like superhero films, anime spans every genre, from kid-friendly action to more mature comedy and romances, and even horror. And now that we're getting over the Marvel hump, I think it's pretty easy to look back through the timeline of how it got to where it is, and try to draw similarities to what's been going on with live-action anime films. It took almost 40 years of the occasional mediocre superhero movie for Sam Raimi to knock one out of the park. Oh, sorry, that's a sports reference. It took 40 years for someone to form the perfect Rasengan. And as soon as he did, all the major studios started cranking them out faster than you can say
pizza time.
So if I had to place anime somewhere on this timeline, I think we'd be right around here, just waiting for someone to come along and get it right. Over the past decade, we've seen more and more attempts at Hollywood adapting anime into live action. And so far a couple have come pretty close to working, but most have failed miserably. So why after 40 years of failure did superhero movies finally catch on? I think there were 2 main reasons. First were the incredible leaps in CGI technology, but we'll talk more about that later. And the other reason was a radical shift in public sentiment, brought on by the tragedy of 9/11. People's need for hope could temporarily be fulfilled by escaping into simple stories of good versus evil. Obviously, that's an incredibly dramatic catalyst, but I think smaller triggers can work just as well. And again, I can't make any claims as to what's causing this spike in interest, but obviously a ton has happened this year, and this might just be me, but I get the feeling that we're heading for a turning point in society, just in what direction nobody knows. Please go left, please go left. One of the biggest obstacles that live action anime is gonna face is the setting and the casting. In order for anime to catch on in the West, it's going to require star power, but we all saw what happened when, I don't know, say Scarlett Johansson got cast in Ghost in the Shell. It's a real problem that eventually Hollywood's gonna have to figure out. It's well above my pay grade, which is $0 by the way. Link to my Patreon in the description. So what about the setting? Well, thanks to the upcoming live action adaptation of Your Name, we're about to find out what happens when you cut and paste a story out of beautiful Japan and into Chicago. I really wish I was kidding. Rather than Mitsuha and Taki, we're gonna get Michelle and Thomas, who are forever bound by the red thread of the American flag. For whatever reason, Hollywood thinks we're too dumb to enjoy a story that doesn't take place in the land of the free, and I don't know, they might be right, but holy is this one a bad decision. Produced by J.J. Abrams and written and directed by Lee Isaac Chung, they actually have a pretty good team working on this, but they're trying to paddle upstream by setting it in the States. And we'll probably just end up making a film that won't be enjoyed by Shinkai fans or normies. Just like with Marvel movies, you have to find that perfect middle ground between being faithful enough to the source material while just making a good movie. I don't know when, but I do believe that anime will eventually find its Jon Favreau. The current generation of successful filmmakers all grew up between the 50s and the 80s, when comic books were readily available to kids. But with the advent of the internet,
I'd rather be on my computer than doing just about anything.
Kids are no longer bound by their birthplace. They're free to explore any hobby or culture, no matter where on the planet it's from.
You're going surfing on the internet.
And now with Netflix going so hard into the anime space, there's gonna be an entire generation who grow up loving anime. Because, let's face it, kids aren't doing a ton of reading or playing outside anymore, so they've got nothing better to do than tap random thumbnails on their iPad. Kids are so lucky. The current generation of movie legends are getting up there in age, and knock on wood, will eventually have to be replaced with TikTok stars or whoever's eager to adapt the stories that they grew up on. One of the biggest things that held back superhero movies in the 90s was the laughable CGI. Visual effects just weren't at the place they needed to be in order for the stories to translate onto screen. And up until very recently, I'd say the same for live action anime. Thanks to the untethered and bizarre imagination of anime artists, adapting their work into live action would require much more extravagant effects than even superhero movies. But we're at the point now where people with next to no budget can create photorealistic effects on their laptops, which means major studios with hundreds of millions of dollars are able to make entire films that are essentially just very realistic looking cartoons, with actors' faces added over top. And in a terrifyingly short amount of time, we won't even need the actors anymore, which puts us in a pretty good position to adapt even the most mind-blowing of anime sequences into live action, which I think a lot of you will probably disagree with, because as far as I can tell, there's a lot of pushback from the anime community against live action remakes, which is totally fair considering the absolute trash that Netflix has been making. But in my mind, every Death Note that gets made brings us one step closer to cracking the formula. And I strongly believe that one day the stars will align and the right weaves will be brought together to make a masterful adaptation on the level of The Dark Knight. I completely concede that some anime are far too rooted in Japanese culture and anime meta to ever work dubbed, let alone live action. Though I'd love to see someone try to adapt the toothbrush scene to a 3D IMAX release. But just because Monogatari could never work doesn't mean nothing will. For example, a Scott Pilgrim-esque Fooly Cooly, Pacific Rim-style Neon Genesis, Donnie Darko-like Steins Gate, Lord of the Rings quality Princess Mononoke, or Weathering with You, Violet Evergarden, Made in Abyss, One Punch Man, Attack on Titan, or even Akira. And I hesitated to even make this video because I think the idea of a live-action Akira would be considered anime blasphemy. But I'm not the type of person to allow adaptations to ruin the source material for me. If Tolkien fans can live through the Hobbit movies, you can survive anything. What I don't want is more half-assed, low-budget attempts that never even had a chance of being good in the first place, which I worry is what J.J. Abrams' Your Name is going to be. And whether you're excited about this potential future or dreading it, the bottom line is that even during a pandy, the Demon Slayer movie managed to absolutely destroy previous box office records, and thanks to its low budget, was potentially more profitable than Hollywood's tentpole release of Tenet, and absolutely blew Mulan out of the water, which flopped like a fish. And if you don't think that studios have taken note of that, then please teach me how to be less cynical. All I see is a mouse with dollar signs in his eyes. But I'm willing to put money down that if it wasn't for stubborn old Miyazaki, Disney would already be knee-deep in anime adaptations, and for better or worse, would be crafting the Ghibli extended universe. If you enjoy having conversations like this one, please consider subscribing. I make videos here every Friday, and if you're already subscribed, the best thing you could do to help me out would be to share this video with your friends and family. But maybe not while they're brushing their teeth. Trust me.